In today's video, I'm going to give you a brief overview of the essentials you need to sword PvP in Minecraft. Today I'm going to be covering W tapping, S tapping, sprint resetting, strafing, spacing, hit selecting, uppercuts, and knockback displacement. This is more of a beginner tutorial. Like it's not the advanced tutorial. This is just mostly things that are kind of common knowledge and that everyone should know and use appropriately. But before we start, I want to make one thing clear. If you want to get better at sword PvP, you can't just like spam your sword and sweep hit and hope for the best. A lot of people think PvP is clicking fast, and that is true 1.8. But in reality, after the combat update, it's not so much about just hitting anymore. It's more movement, timing, and control. If you can control the fight, you can like pretty much control your whole combo, and if you can control the combo, you can control the whole fight. So they kind of go hand in hand. So let's start with the most important mechanic of all. Okay, so before we start with W or S tapping, you need to learn how to sprint reset. Sprint resetting is the foundation of every combo that actually is like good. So basically, sprint resetting is when when you hit someone, you stop moving for a short amount of time, then you go back to sprinting and hitting them again. This is important because if you keep your sprint momentum properly, you can keep your combos consistent and build a combo much easier. So pretty much in game, right after you hit, let go of your W key for a split second, then hold it again and keep sprinting. Please turn on auto sprint. There's no reason why you should not have auto sprint on. So it should look something like this. Hold W, hit, release W. Now repeat. Hold W, hit, release W. Hold W again, hit, release W. Over and over. If you just do that, if you just repeat that over and over and over, you'll land combos. This is why sprint resetting is so important, because W and S tapping, they both depend on sprint resetting. So if you don't understand sprint resetting, then W and S tapping are just out of your reach for you. So before you even worry about like good/fancy PvP techniques, just practice this. Hit, reset, hit, reset, hit, reset. Once that feels natural, then you're ready to move on. Now let's talk about W tapping. W tapping is one of the most common PvP techniques, and it is one of the first things you should learn if you want to improve. The idea is simple. After you land a hit, you quickly release W and then press it again, just like how we said in sprint resetting. That little reset helps you keep your sprint and doesn't make you hit a sweep hit and instead a knockback hit. Sweep hits are bad because they don't carry as much knockback, and the player can just hit you back and you just start trading hits. The little reset that you get, yeah, it keeps your sprint, and it makes you hits give more knockback, and it makes your combos more consistent. So instead of just holding W the whole time, you're basically holding W, hitting, then releasing W. So hold W, hit, release W. Hold, hit, release. When you do this correctly, your opponents gets knocked back further, which makes it easier to keep comboing them. At first, it might feel a little awkward because it seems like letting go of the W key would slow you down. But in PvP, it's pretty much the opposite. It helps you stay in control, and a lot of newer players just hold W and left click, and they just try to sweep hit or just click as fast as possible. Usually Bedrock players, but that usually gets them nowhere. Once you learn to W tap, you start to feel like you're actually controlling the fight instead of just hoping for the best. And when you W tap, your combos get much better. Now, S tapping is the same idea, except instead of using W as the one, like you still use W, but you put S into the combo. So after you hit someone, instead of releasing W, you tap S for a moment and then keep moving. So this can be used to create more distance, which can help in situations if you're too close, or just to keep them further back when you're comboing. Usually if you can get S tapping down, S tapping is like a little bit better than W tapping, just because you can create more distance and it's harder to hit your opponent back. So the basic idea is hold W, hit, release W, and at the same time you release W, hold down S for a moment. Then hold W, hit, release. So it should be hold, W, hit, release W, and at the same time, hold S for a moment. Then go back forward, hit, release, and repeat. That small movement creates much better spacing. S-tapping is especially useful if you want to stay far away from the opponent in a fight. Sometimes if you W-tap too aggressively, you end up pushing into the enemy too much and lose your spacing. S-tapping can help you fix that. It gives you a little bit more control over where both players are during the fight. And just like W-tapping, this takes practice. If you try it once or twice and it feels weird, that's normal. The goal is to make it automatic so that when you're fighting, you are not thinking about every single key press. You just do it naturally. Now, one of the biggest things that separates decent PvP players from actually like good PvP players is strafing. Strafing is basically moving left or right while fighting to make yourself harder to hit. You can do this to your A and D keys while you are hitting and sprint resetting. So let's say you're W tapping, hold W, hit W, release. It doesn't matter if you're pressing A or D, as long as you have that down, it still works. So while you're W tapping, you can strafe. That extra movement, it makes it a lot harder for the opponent to hit and track you, and that's like a big thing that good players use. A lot of fights are won just because one player moves better than the other. If you're standing still, you're easy to hit. If you're moving in a predictable W tap line, you're also easy to hit. But if you're strafing properly, your opponent has to keep adjusting their aim, and that gives you a huge advantage. Strafing also helps you stay in control of distance. You can move around slightly around your opponent instead of directly into them, which can avoid getting counter hit. When you combine strafing with W or S tapping, the combo becomes much harder to escape and it's more deadly. This is why strafing is not just extra movement. I believe it's a core part of fighting as well. So spacing. Spacing is one of the most important things in Sword PvP, and a lot of players ignore it completely. Spacing basically means keeping the right distance between you and your opponent. If you are too close, you can get hit back easily. If you're too far, you might miss your hits. So the goal is to stay back at an ideal distance where you make it harder for them to hit you back. In general, when you're comboing someone, you want to keep them around the edge of your reach so they're constantly taking knockback and struggling to get close enough to trade with you. So that's about 3 blocks, but you want to keep it 3 blocks just at the edge of your reach so that you can hit them, but they can't hit you. Good spacing makes combos last longer. Bad spacing makes you lose control of the combo fast. If you are crowding your opponent too much, you might often end up trading hits instead of comboing hits on them. And if you're too far away, the combo falls apart as you can't hit them. So spacing is really about understanding where your opponent is and adjusting your movement to keep them in the worst possible position for them and the best possible position for you. This is why some players seem like they're just sitting outside your reach the whole fight. They are not just lucky, they are controlling the space. And once you get good at that, fights become a lot easier. Now, hit selecting is a little more advanced, but it's still one of the most important things to understand. Hit selecting means knowing when to attack instead of just attacking all the time. A lot of people spam their sword and hope they get a hit, but good PvP is more about timing than just trying to get hits on them. You need to know when it is the right moment to go in. You should not try to start a W tap combo when you're basically standing on top of someone with no space. That usually ends badly. Instead, you can double crit them or S tap them. Sometimes the opening is when your opponent moves too close. Sometimes it's when they miss a hit. And sometimes it's after you land a hit or an uppercut. Hit selecting is about reading the fight and choosing the best moment to strike. This is why people with good hit selection look so much cleaner in fights. They're not just swinging randomly. They're choosing their hits, and that makes a huge difference. If you can learn when to start a combo and when to back off, your PvP gets way better. Because a lot of the time, the best attack is not the fastest one, it's the smartest one. Now, speaking of different types of attacks, there are 3 main ones besides W tapping and S tapping. sweep hits, crits, knockback hits, and uppercuts. Let's start with uppercuts because those are really important for stunning combos. Uppercuts are when you jump and hit the player at the same time, which causes them to get lifted upward. The upward movement is really useful because it can create a strong opening for a combo. If you land an uppercut correctly, the opponent is forced into a horrible position, and then it becomes extremely easy to start W or S tapping after that. Uppercuts are great when your opponent is moving toward you and you want to interrupt their momentum. Instead of letting them get the first hit, you jump and hit them first, which can get you a better position right away. This is why uppercuts are often used as starter tools and not combo keepers. They help you create an opening before the real combo even begins. If you learn how to use uppercuts well, your combos will start to feel a lot easier to start. Critical hits. So now let's talk about crits. Crits are definitely the most well-known attack type in PvP. Everyone knows that a crit happens when you attack while falling from a jump. It causes extra damage. Specifically in Sword PvP, a critical hit does 1.5x damage, which makes them extremely useful if you want to do quick damage. If you hit someone twice, boom boom, in a double crit, that's already 3 hits that you would get comboing. So crits are extremely powerful, especially if you can land them at the start of a fight or after creating an opening. That said, you usually don't want to just jump around every single fight and try to crit, as that will make you extremely comboable and your movement will be super easy to predict. The best time to crit is when you know the hit is going to connect and when the extra damage will matter. So crits are strong, but they need good timing. They're not just for style, they are a real part of high level PvP. Now, sweep hits are the last major type of attack I want to mention. Sweep hits happen when your attack creates a sweep effect instead of a clean direct hit. So this happens because after you hit your first hit sprinting, every hit after that is a sweep hit. So the sweep hits are good for if you're fighting, a crowd, like a lot of like a crowd, a lot of zombies, a lot of players. But it's not good in a 1v1 fight, and in most fights it's just not good in general because you lose a lot of knockback when you try to sweep hit people. Sweep hit combos can be good because they catch people off guard, but that's only really against high level players as they don't expect it. So as you know, knockback is essential for combos. If you lose control of knockback, you lose control of the entire fight. So while sweep hits can happen naturally and accidentally, they're not something you want to rely on if your goal is to try to combo people. In other words, sweep hits are not usually your best friend in Sword PvP. You want to keep your hits. You want to use your hits to help and keep the opponent in a bad position and not give them the chance to recover. That's why more players focus on W, S tapping, and knockback control. Now, finally, let's talk about the hardest of the easy techniques, knockback displacement. This is one of the most important things to understand if you want to look cleanly into PvP. Now, Marlo / Danger Mario has a great video on knockback displacement, which I'll link in the description. I don't like Marlo at all, because, she cheats, and it's not even, I'm not even going to say she, I'm just going to say he, but I won't lie, the video is pretty good. But basically it works like this. As soon as you hit, you can swing your crosshair up, down, left, or right, and it will move that player in that position, in that direction. This is really useful because it gives more control over where the player goes and while you're comboing them. So instead of hitting someone and letting them fly forward, you're trying to influence that movement yourself. That means you can use your aim to help guide the fight. If you want them pushed a certain way, you can adjust your crosshair to influence the direction. So let's say you hit someone, right as you hit them, if you flick your crosshair to the right, they'll move right with you. It's great for catching them off guard and leaving them in a horrible position and just kind of moving them around. They can't really do anything. It's really useful in combos because, it can keep them in an awkward position away from a good escape path. And it helps you stay in control of the fight and start moving toward a wall or a corner or really wherever you want to. A lot of good players use knockback displacement without really even thinking about it anymore. Also, this doesn't really count, but it looks really good for clips, I can't lie. Now for newer players, just knowing it exists is already a huge step, because once you start paying attention to knockback displacement, you notice how much control you really have over a fight. Now the real question is, how do all of these things work together? Because learning each technique by itself is good, but sword PvP ultimately is not about using one move at a time. It's about combining them. For example, you might start with an uppercut to create an opening, then you land a hit, then you keep going with a W tap or S tap. While doing that, you keep strafing to be unpredictable. You need your spacing to be good so that the opponent can't get hits back in. And if needed, you can use knockback displacement to keep them in a bad position. That's what good PvP looks like. Not just one skill, a system. A way of controlling the fight from start to finish. And once you start thinking like that, Sword PvP becomes much easier to understand. So those are the essentials you need to know for Sword PvP, which is W tapping, S tapping, sprint resetting, strafing, spacing, hit selecting, uppercuts, critical hits, sweep hits, and knockback displacement. Now obviously this is not every single technique in the game. There's a ton of stuff to learn later, especially if you want to get more into advanced Sword PvP. But if you can master the basics from this video, you'll already be better than 95% of players. And the biggest thing to remember is this. PvP is not just about speed or hitting, it's about control. If you control your movement, your spacing, your timing, and your knockback, then you're already on the path to win. So go practice these techniques, get into fights. You might mess up a few times, but learn from them and keep improving. Because that's how you actually get better. And that being said, this is the basics of Sword PvP. Thank you for watching. Yo, I just want to let y'all know, thank you so much for watching today's video. I really hope you enjoyed it. And honestly, I learned a lot about PvP too. Before I could like W tap, and I could W tap, but I could like not really S tap consistently. And with this video, I learned about uppercuts. Like just researching this video, I learned about S tapping, which is boom, boom, oh shoot, boom, 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 and uppercuts, which is like that. I knew about strafing, but I kind of learned how to implement it. So like this, just kind of go back and forth, just like oops. Alright. Like that, and it's a pretty effective technique. I also learned about spacing, so you know, you gotta stay a good amount of distance. So although yes, this video is for teaching others, I also learned a lot about in this video myself. So I really hope you enjoyed. If you did enjoy it, consider subscribing. It helps out. It lets new people see this video. With that being said, thank you for watching, and that is the basics of Minecraft. Yeah, see ya.